that period taught me more than any win ever could.
Yeah.
Honestly, money was good, but like the hardships is what actually grew me as a person as well. Discipline is not boring. I had the discipline to work, but I was taking it as though it was forced upon me, right? And it was not fun. So I wanted to, do things differently and grow differently. But I realized it's not boring.
Yeah.
It's actually freedom. Because without it, right, your business owns you.
Today's guest is Pradesh, a founder who learned the hard way that growth without structure isn't progress. When revenue started rolling in, Pradesh did what many of us dream of. He scaled fast, hired quickly, expanded aggressively. But without systems or structure, the success collapsed under its own weight. Soon there were no new sales, personal cash was burning, and the brand he'd built was at risk. But from that chaos came a new discipline, one built on documentation, KPIs, and turning hustle into an actual institution. Let's dive into Pradesh's founder fuck up. Pradesh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks. It was a great intro.
I tried. So look, let's get into a bit of a backstory. What business were you building at the time, and what early wins made you so confident that let's just scale?
So I've built multiple companies and we've screwed up a lot, but I think the best thing that I can talk about, which is the most relevant, would be my oil trading company and as well as my arm that does consulting. It's all under Stratus Trading, right? You see, when I first started, I was building what eventually became Stratus, right? In consulting, we are right now one of the top line consulting firms that doesn't use AI and all kinds of technologies. We have people on the ground. We are able to do deep AML checks, and we are able to also verify product and all, which is very important. Um, a consultancy in one of the most traditional and risk-heavy industries is what we are doing, right? Oil and gas, global commodities and trade. We were helping clients navigate deals. We were moving millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. This was even before we started buying. This was when Stratus was just a brokerage arm, right? We were just brokering deals in oil. I tried gold, it never worked out, and eventually fuel was where we settled down. Early on, we closed some really good wins, deals verified, clients happy, and the word started spreading. That's how people started to know about us, and I was posting a lot on LinkedIn as well. The more success stories came in, the more I believe like we've cracked it, right? We got this. So naturally, I thought that the next steps was to scale. It's time to go big. It's time to build our brand, and I wanted to scale fast, right? That's what I wanted to do. So I started hiring people, opening more service offerings, trying to replicate myself essentially across teams, which was wrong. And it felt like growth at first, but in reality, I was expanding more on an excitement and not really structure.
Okay. So you said obviously we scaled on that excitement. We've got a bunch of wins coming in because we kind of got a bit of a network effect from the successive deals that you've done, the personal branding that you would be building. So, what were some of the decisions that, looking back, you wish you'd kind of slow down on? You kind of mentioned a little bit about cloning yourself there, but yeah, what
Yeah.
were some of the decisions you wish you slowed down on when you felt, oh, it's time to scale?
Honestly, honestly, everything. Honestly, everything. I hired before documenting, which was not right. I gave titles before defining responsibilities, right? Because I was working very closely with friends also.
Yeah.
Yes, I was running the business, but I had a lot of friends that was like, "Hey, we've known each other for a long time. Let's do this thing together," and so on. So, we were throwing titles out: COO, CFO, all kinds of random titles which just didn't make sense and it didn't mean anything, right? I focused on bringing people in without first building that system for them to actually succeed in, right?
Sure.
I've always been the kind of guy that was like, if I do well, I'm not greedy with money, but if I do well, I want my family or I want my friends to be able to benefit off of it to a certain degree. So either you come and work on as staff, or you come and run the company together with me, or I set up a specialized arm that I can invest in and you can run something like that. I thought that energy and leadership would compensate for the process. So instead of SOPs, I was giving pep talks more. Uh, instead of systems, I was micromanaging everybody, and everyone was busy, but nothing was measured, so we couldn't really see where we were going. Looking back, I wish I slowed down during that time and I built the infrastructure that we have now,
To
before
scale.
chasing more volumes.
Yeah.
One thing I realized a long time ago was that you can't scale chaos. You can multiply it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that. So obviously we brought in a bunch of mates. We've given them a bunch of job titles. We're pep talking. We're hoping that energy kind of drives this scale. When did the cracks start to show? Was there like a moment you realized, oh shit, I fucked up here. We can't sustain this pace, or the business is kind of near on collapsing around me. When did those cracks begin to show?
They were showing throughout, right? They were showing very clearly. They were showing throughout. It's just that I was in my head. At the same time, I had an ego, right? And I was not. I was in denial, and I just didn't want to accept it because I I don't come from a wealthy family, and I had to do everything from scratch by myself. Of course, I had good support from my mom and my dad in terms of like motivating and saying you can do stuff, and you're hardworking, you can do things and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like actually like financial support to grow a company, scale, or advice, right, on what to do, we don't have because nobody in my family runs a business. So everything was just like I had to just figure things out from long ago. There were there was this 1 month when our pipeline just went dry, right? Like it was 8 months, I think, 8 month period where there were no deals. We couldn't broker anymore. Everything seemed to be fake. We didn't know what to do. There were no new deals, no revenue coming in. But the overhead, of course, stayed, right? Because as much as I hired my friends, I also hired a bunch of people to get things going. So, for salaries, for some kind of basic marketing that we used to do locally over here, essentially just everything. Um, I remembered looking at the numbers and realizing that even though we were big, like considerably, we were scaling, so we're considered like decently big locally over here, but we were not stable, and the growth wasn't real. It was
Yeah.
just expansion, right? There were no foundation, no nothing,
You
and
expanded
that's when.
costs. You
Yeah,
expanded
yeah,
your
exactly.
cost rather than the business.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So from like a one-man team right now, I have like a 30-man team, and I'm like, yeah, this is expansion, this is scale, right? Well, there's nothing there, and when the cracks became more obvious, and I started to like lower my ego and be like, something's not right here, you know. That's when we started to actually make the shifts and the change. Say,
Yeah.
people don't know who was responsible for what. I didn't know anything. My partners, my friends, we didn't know anything. Clients got mixed messages, right? Sometimes we were pushing as a brokerage house. Sometimes we were pushing as not a brokerage house, but we were like a facilitation arm, because we didn't want to have that umbrella of being a broker. And,
Yeah.
I was doing firefighting daily, trying to put out fires left, right, front, back, center. It was basically like watching a ship, take on water
Yeah.
while still trying to build more decks on top of it. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I get you. I think I like what you said there about when you let go of your ego. When sometimes we define sex define
Ah,
success
yes.
differently. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, it's I want a big company. I've got 30 people working for me. I'm the boss, the CEO. That can get it. We can get an ego attached to that. So it's good that you kind of learned that lesson. But obviously, a lot going on. Like you're not getting any revenue. You're perhaps burning your own cash. I believe we
Yeah.
mentioned. Um, so what was like the personal and professional fallout of that period? Like financially, emotionally, like not just your brand, your reputation, but how you were dealing with this? Because this is like you're in crisis mode, you're fighting fires every day, that's all you're doing, right? What was going on there?
It was it was rough, man. It was exactly like what you said just now. It was really rough. Financially, I had to dig into my own savings just to
Yeah.
keep the operations running. And a lot of times, right, when I speak to people or I do keynotes and stuff, right, and when we do Q&A, they tend to say, hey, when you trade fuel or when you broker fuel, each month, as long as the deal goes through, you can make a couple of hundred grand, you can make a couple of $1 million, right? Each month. And in Malaysia, if you do a conversion from US dollar to Malaysian ringgit, it's like almost what 1.5 right now or something, 1.12, something like that. Sorry, 4.5, 4.12. So it's quite a big jump, and we can be very, very comfortable. But what people don't understand is at the end of the day, it's not considered a business if I'm still using my own money, right? Because eventually, just like what happened before, right? 8 months in, no brokering, no deals, nothing, and we're just using my own funds to get things moving, right? So, yeah, I had to dig into my own savings to keep the operations going. Emotionally, it was super draining, um, but I've always been quite tough, quite resilient since I was young. I used to be a professional fighter, by the way, in case you didn't know that. I used to fight. I used to do MMA professionally, Taekwondo, Muay Thai as well when I was a bit younger. Stopped when I was about 21. So the discipline has always been there. I'm quite heavy on not showing too much emotion, just getting things done, not getting into my head. I'm quite used to those kind of things. When you're building something and your name is tied to it. Stratus is of course it's a company name in general, but if you realize like the company is backed by my reputation and my name, that's the main thing, right? So failure automatically just feels personal to me.
Yeah.
And brand wise, I'd worked so hard. I was not doing much media, but in the small little circle of real traders, buyers, sellers, and everything, I worked so hard to build a name, that is around precision, around trust, around getting things done right, especially in an industry like oil and gas. And it's a dinosaur industry, right? Since the
Small industry
1920s.
too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's an industry that moves markets, right? Like people go to war for fuel and all these kind of things. So it's a massive industry since the 1920s when the Rockefeller started to actually trade. Because before that, there was no such thing as fuel trading, right? But when the Rockefeller started doing it, with Standard Oil, I think it's Standard Oil. It's a dinosaur industry. It's never been innovative, never changed, and all these kind of things, right? So I worked out so difficult, so hard to build, a brand name around all of these things, and here I was internally just running it like a startup, with no structure, and it was quite humbling to be honest. But honestly, um, that period taught me more than any win ever could. Honestly, money was good. Like the hardships is what actually grew me as a person as well. I learned that discipline is not boring. I had the discipline to work, but I was taking it as though it was forced upon me, right? And it was not fun. So I wanted to, do things differently and grow differently. But I realized it's not boring.
Yeah.
It's actually freedom. Because without it, right, your business owns you. Mike Tyson said it once before, right? You gotta do the things you hate the most, like you love them, and then that's where discipline comes in play, right? Because you hate the running, especially in training. Before you hate the running, you hate, doing your phone calls. You hate, keeping things, structured with an SOP and everything. But if you do them as though you love them, then you actually build a real good system around it, and then you have discipline.
Yeah, it's something I took with my coachees, founders that I coach all the time, is that you have to have those habits. And those habits are typically not always the things that you enjoy to do. The path of least resistance is to do the things that you enjoy, but that doesn't always move the needle. And emotionally, how you like you've got this 8 months where basically this business is just burning you dry. You made all that money, and now it's just taking it and taking it. And your personal reputation. How are you feeling emotionally? Was it like because I went through like a period similar, and it's kind of depressed. Like it's hard. Like,
Yep.
how did you keep yourself going and not give up? Because many people might give up at this stage, but you didn't. Because obviously, we're going to get to the turning point shortly. But
Yep.
like, you didn't give up.
No,
What was
so for me, right, it was like I was still in denial stage. I was still kind of blinded because you had a lot of money, right? If it's let's say if it's a SaaS business, for example, whereby you're selling $10,000 worth of product every single month, and then you don't sell for the next 2 months, you kind of feel it. For us, it was not, right. I could say I could feel it, but it was not heavily impacting myself because each month the profits still come in from the previous deals, right? And people sign a 1 year contract. So in the end, when there was no deals for 8 months, emotionally I was kind of numb because I'm like, well, maybe we're just trying to not, we're not doing things right. Maybe we're just not working hard enough. But hey, next month I still have, $200,000 coming in. I can segregate 20% of that or 30% of that, and we can start to push deals through. So I should have realized things sooner, and the emotional impact should have been harder for me to then wake up and say, no, 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 this is not right. But it took me, like, I guess, a clear 8 to 12 months to then realize, shit, my contract is going to end soon, which means then no new money is coming in,
Yeah.
and then I'm pretty much screwed. So I need to
Classic.
actually change things. Yeah.
So this is classic of those that have like build up a war chest or a savings, or like they've got like, you know, they're not looking at it properly because they feel safe, and you allow that time to go on too long. I hear you. And so, this 8 month period has been tough. We're now thinking, shit, we've got to change. Um, when did you sort of stop chasing scale? When did you go, you know what, we need to rebuild this business around structure? At what point was it like, hey, we've got to do something different?
So, good question. So, I used to watch a lot of podcasts, right? I used to listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and Stephen Bartlett is one of my favorite
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah, right. He's great, and I cannot remember who, but there was one that I was listening to, and the person asked. He said, everything comes with one simple question, right? If I stepped away from the business for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, would the business survive? I think that was just it's as cliche as it comes. But then I
Mm.
was realizing, right, like if I stepped away from the business and there was no more me funding personally, right, into the company, what would happen? And the honest answer was no, right? If I stepped away, the business wouldn't survive. And I realized if I stepped away, there's no business as well, because all the context was mine, everything was built around me, right? All if people were to reach out to us, they were directly reaching out to me, Pradesh, right? Instead of reaching out to like my company and everything. So everything had to go through me, and then I realized like that realization actually hit hard, and I realized I hadn't built a company, I had built a dependency system around myself. That's what I've built, right? So I started stripping it all back, and I realized like it was time, right? I took a step back. Even in fighting before, I used to tell when there were times when I was coaching as well, right? I used to tell people like, hey, you will learn most during your sparring sessions. So if you cannot do it anymore and things are just going too hard, step back, take a knee, and your partner will know like, okay, he needs to take a break, and then you start to figure things out and think about it. So I did that, right? I stripped everything back. I started documenting everything from procedures to roles to how commissions worked, to how do we teach new staff what to do, to what is the SOP for onboarding clients, and all these things, right? We just created everything in black and white, and I stopped chasing fast and I started chasing repeatable. That was the goal, right? Instead of getting fast deals, big sums of money and all, I was like, look, if he cannot supply 100,000 metric tons to me, but he can supply 30,000 metric tons, but it's super dependable, and it's he I can see that his performance is good. They're open to negotiating terms, instead of saying procedures cannot change, just follow, otherwise leave, those kind of situations, right? And they say stuff like, we're open to discussion. How can we protect ourselves as
Yeah.
sellers, and under Stratus, protect yourself as a buyer then. So I was like chasing these kind of things instead, and I realized like if I could have negotiations, I would be happy to then put money to maybe fly down to Singapore, to Dubai, wherever it is, to meet this person, negotiate terms, and sign a document from there.
Yeah.
I realized that because real growth isn't just about getting bigger, it's about becoming repeatable in your own business. And this way, if I step back for 30 days, it's self-going, right? So
Yeah.
that was it.
And did you have to scale back the team dramatically? At one point, you said you're at like 30, you got your mates with all these random job titles, you got all these people. Did you also have to like cut?
I no. So I have this thing which is still stuck with me, which is I feel responsible all the time for my staff, right? And if they jumped jobs, or if they, quit their job to wait for me to launch something so that they can start working with me, for me, whatever, I feel responsible. So what I did was I did not scale back. Instead, I had a very open and honest conversation with them, and I just said, hey, this is the situation, right? I'm not planning on cutting down anybody's salaries or whatever, but this is how it's going to be. We're going to have, we're going to have KPIs, so I have to look at your performance and so on. But at the same time, we're not going to spend money on certain things. And for certain kinds of roles, I would say, hey, I'm gonna increase your commission output instead, but I have to reduce your basic. And if that works, great. If it doesn't work, let me know. Let's figure something out. And a lot of them are happy because they're comfortable with me. They like working with me, so they say it's okay. And they also know that if they do things right, um, then the payout is really good. And
Yeah.
from there, we kind of had a huge turn point, which is everybody started performing even better, and they realize like if they come it's either to the office or if they stay at home or whatever, they're just super comfortable because they know I'm open to discussing things and I'm not very MNC-ish kind of vibe, right? Corporate
Yeah.
vibe. I'm very open, so yeah, things were pretty good actually.
So that transparency with your team was great for your change management because obviously you were documenting your bidding SOPs, but the culture of the business previously was just like people knocking about, being chased by you or that micromanagement.
Yep.
Because of that transparency and honesty that you had with the team, you're actually able to retain them because also you had those great contracts to fund this retention.
Yep.
But brilliant. So you went deep into that structure, like I said, documentation. You started thinking about KPIs, onboarding kits for clients, for your team, obviously thinking about commission structures. Which of these do you think, like, what if you were to pick one of them, what kind of had the biggest impact in like initially stabilizing the business?
Without doubt, without question, KPIs and documentation, without doubt. I think there's a lot of different things for different kinds of businesses, but for oil and gas, and in the trade line especially, I think without doubt it was KPIs and documentation. Once you start tracking things, the truth start to become visible, right? Suddenly you can see what's actually working, what's not, who's performing. It changes the whole dynamic, not just internally, but the success rate of gaining more clients as well.
Yeah.
Because once you have a laid out procedure, not the working procedure, right? But what to look for, what are the red flags, right? Even if that seller is legit, but it doesn't conform with our, SOP, we just don't go for it because they may be legit, they may have product, but if it doesn't conform to, I guess, the global standard, if it doesn't conform to, compliance and all these kind of things, right? It just puts us at risk, puts the brand at risk, because
Yeah.
maybe the fuel is real. Like for example, right? You could have fuel that maybe come from the UAE, that could come from Rotterdam, that could come from Kazakhstan, for example, but they could potentially be Russian products. And of course, there are countries that still do trade with Russia. It's not a problem. For me personally, I don't see it as a problem. But of course, the clients that we deal with, they might have an issue, and that is not just because they have any kind of personal issue with Russia. It's just compliance,
Totally.
global compliance, right? So one thing is, we realize like, oh, okay, if the price looks good, if the origin certificate of origin states that it's in the Middle East, or if it's Kazakhstan or whatever, it's good to go. The problem is the fuel DNA doesn't change. The kind of crude that is refined from Russian crude, the kind of product, sorry, that is refined from Russian crude has that specific DNA, right? The coloration and everything, and these kind of things you cannot run. So even if the prices are great and all of the documentation shows outside of Russia, a lot of times end users who are big names, right? If they know that the fuel DNA, once they do their own testing, is Russian, it just has a big backlash on us. So with
Yeah.
all these SOPs and KPIs and all this documentation, we actually get to dive in deeper and make sure things are proper, right? So essentially the documentation gave everyone a playbook, which was really good. The KPI systems then gave everyone a direction, right? And of course, the commission structure gave everyone an incentive. So, so it was good, right? And that's yeah, that's when the chaos finally became measurable,
Yeah.
right? Yep. And once you can measure it, you can improve it, and
Yes.
that's when our company stratus, we stopped being a brand, and we became a system instead.
One big quote I always say: if it can be measured, it can be improved. And also, I say to be accountable is to
Yeah.
count. right? Like your KPIs, you got to be accountable to your results. You have to be able to count.
Yep.
So really, really good. I like that. Obviously, documenting so that we don't have these major issues like we bought the wrong kind of oil and our customers pissed off with us now, right? And having that KPIs so that we're actually measuring team performance, incentivizing them appropriately. You want your team to make money, but you also want the business to be making the correct kind of money, and I like that. That's really good. And if we were to look back, you know, obviously different founders are at different types of businesses, and you were very fortunate to be in an industry where you had large ticket cash flow coming in for a year during this painful period. Many people don't have this opportunity,
Yep.
having those large contract cash coming in. So, what would you tell a founder who's, you know, they feel like they've hit gold, right? Just like you did back in the day. Shit's moving fast. What would you tell them when they're thinking about hiring their first team, or they're like, okay, now it's time to scale? How do you think they can avoid the same trap that you fell into?
Build the structure first. That's essentially what we didn't do. Just do everything the opposite, essentially, right? Build the structure first. Even if it's just you and it's just maybe one more person, right? And it's just a two-man company, it's just a two-person company. Just build the structure, figure out that, later on when you want to scale, when you want to hire people, what is the structure going to be? Figure out the compensation plans, because that will come quite wildly later when you realize, like, wait a minute, when I pay people their salaries and I pay people their like commissions and their bonuses, suddenly as a business I'm not making any money, right? And the important thing is, when you start a business, you take all the risk. The goal is for you to become financially free and for you to also be able to um, make money, right? Essentially. So if you don't plan all of these things, like even the compensation plan, right? What kind of margin do you want to keep? At what point do you go lower or higher, and so on, is very important. So just document everything from the very beginning. And if
Yeah.
people come and tell you, right? People come and say, "Hey, it's just you. You are the company. There's no one else, right? You don't have a team. It's just you and your friend. You don't have a team. What's the point of having all these documents and SOPs in place and everything?" It's because then, you build a habit and you have discipline, and then you know that when it's time to scale, you already have things prepared, right? So you don't have to wait until you have like a dozen people to start creating systems, right? Because if you scale without them, then you just build pressure into your own business. If you scale without them, you're putting pressure onto yourself, and eventually when you realize, oh no, I have too many contracts, I really need to do a quick and fast hire, we need to go aggressive. Then you realize when you hire like 10 people at a go, and then you just don't know what to do, you're stuck, right? And then you realize, like, you didn't have a proper structure, you're mixing and matching all the calls, you're mixing things up, and things just get more chaotic after that, right? um, Documentation is important, and most importantly, I think, slow down when it's working. And I'm a very aggressive person, so when I say slow down, I don't mean take a step back and be relaxed. I mean, like, make sure structure is in place. And if you want to go aggressive, make sure you have all documentation, all SOPs prepared. Then go really, really
Yeah.
aggressive, so that things don't fall out halfway through, and you don't have to then stop or pause your expansion or your revenue stream because you don't know how to solve things and figure things out, right?
Yeah.
You already have things in place, then you can go really aggressive. And I think the best time to create structure isn't after things fall apart. um, you know it's when they're going great, right? And things
Beginning.
are doing
Yeah.
really good. That's when you make sure your structure is good as well. Then when you have clarity, you have confidence, and the space to build things properly, then you feel good, and then this is a real business and things are moving, right? So if you want to scale, make sure your systems can breathe, before you start running, right? No stamina.
Yeah, I like that. Like it's kind of like don't slow down. Go and go do that sprint, but make sure your shoelaces are tied first. Like you need to make sure your shoes aren't going to fall off or you're going to trip up. And that's the structure, building that from the beginning. I really like that. I think that's a great lesson. I think people miss that step a lot,
Yep.
those foundations. Thanks so much. Like the great lesson, Pradesh. And if people want to work with you, if people want to buy crude oil, or how do they find you? What are you doing now? Like, plug me.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So we have systems, right? We have a way that we work. So if you want Stratus to buy, right? So we have two arms. This is what we do, right? If you want us to buy fuel, you have to reach out to us through our website or just send an email at procurement@stratusoil.com.my. You can find all of this on our websites. You can reach out to just our general info, like a desk through our website, and we will connect you to all the teams, right? And that is if you want to sell to us. If we are buying, it's a similar process. You have to reach out to us, but we don't deal with Gmail accounts, free accounts, and so on. If you are a broker and you don't have a proper, company that is running things behind, be upfront. Don't come and tell me that you're a mandate holder. Don't come and tell me that you're connected directly to the refinery, because we've been doing this long enough. We failed enough and succeeded enough. We know how it works. We know that you are not directly to the refinery. It doesn't work that way, right? So just tell us the truth and tell us how you want to get this going. We'll be happy to keep you in the loop and make sure that we can move things as well. So the buying and trading side is super complex. On the other hand, we have Stratus Advisory, which is an advisory arm from Stratus Trading. Same concept, everything's the same. You reach out to us through our website, you can even reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I'm a bit slow sometimes, but I will reply you and connect you to the right people in my team. But essentially, what we do in Stratus Advisory is we do document verification, we do strategy, and how to execute in the oil and gas, ecosystem. So we have a lot of clients who are very large that just get us on retainer. And what they do is then they just, if they're dealing, because they're so big, right, they're majors, they just get a lot of inquiries and they just chuck them all to us. And we do all the verifications and we say this is not right, that doesn't seem right, this procedure such it doesn't work, it doesn't exist, this document doesn't even exist, someone created something like this. We do all this stuff, right? And we give them strategy, how to execute, who to call, where to do this, and if they want, they can do add-ons. They can get me or my team to even fly out in person when they are doing physical trades in ports, and we will be there in person to make sure things are going well. Um, you know, we can do one thing that our clients really like is AML checks, right? So if they're dealing with either a buyer or a seller and all these things, right, traders, whatever, we just need a couple of information and we can do really deep dives on anti-money laundering and all this stuff, right? And we will know who you are and whether you're right and all this stuff. So yeah, our advisory arm is doing great. We have clients on board. We just actually started hiring for the advisory arm, hiring again, one more round, right? So we're pushing on that. And yeah, I mean,
This
it's
time with
it's very
structure.
yeah,
This
yeah,
time you're hiring with structure.
yes, exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing your founder fuck up with us. And yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's a great chat, Ben. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.